day before.
Days later, I was in Bilsthorpe with a mate and I was excitedly telling him about the first date I had with Sharon when he pointed out that actually it was only a few minutes drive away, a point that I wasn't actually aware of, being geographically challenged. You might think that's a flaw in a role where I actually cover 7 counties. But my mate said, well, Rainworth's so literally only down the road. So I drove to Rainworth, and actually, as I got close to Rainworth, I did actually recall the signs, because it does a fantastic job of self-promotion. It says, turn right to Rainworth, there's a toilet and a phone. Sharon was very happy to see me, but I did have a panic when all her walls were taken up with photographs of Olivia, her niece, who I assumed must be her daughter. I didn't broach the subject. I believe I may have possibly stayed the night. I may have done, I don't know. I thought I'd impress her with a newly learnt talent. Like I say, I was living with my granddad, and he spent a lot of the time asleep. And so I used my time very wisely. I did what most people would do if they had a bit of extra time on their hands. And I started writing down phonetically Anthony Hopkins' lines from Red Dragon, the prequel to Silence of the Lambs. So that morning I turned to Sharon and I said, "You're very tan, Sharon, and your hands are so rough. Like a cop's hands in the dark. And that shape load is something in the it has a little ship on the bottom, does it not?"
Why, Sharon?
In hindsight, it was a little misjudged. She almost soiled us. But she did forgive me, and I learnt from my mistakes. Unfortunately, the next time I stayed at the house, I did soil myself. In any new relationship, untested grounds, you can't so very much say, "Pull my finger off." So very discreetly, I passed a little air. The only problem is that last night it had some particularly bad ham. What came out wasn't in the form of gas. I started warming up and had a sudden panic, and I put my hand down to inspect. Through the gap between the duvet and my arm, I could see the damage. Purest liquids.
No, you know why we're not eating right now.
Very quickly, I grabbed the duvet under both of my arms to stop the niff from escaping. Now, at the time, I was leaving Heckler building products to leave to Rettig radiators, so I was pretty much winding down and looking for reasons just to stay in bed. And Sharon was she was only just starting her new school life, so I was hoping that she'd go pretty soon. So I was like, so I'm holding it all in. I'm like, right then, you're off. Yeah, see you in a bit. 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 You off then? Are you off? You off? You off? Off? And she wasn't going anywhere. And she decided to put her leg on the bed and a bottle of moisturising cream, and said, "You couldn't rub that into my leg, could you?" Now, I've got one claw down here. I've got one perfectly good hand, so I managed to, in a short amount of time, remove most of the remnants of my right hand and squeeze the moisturising cream with the claw. After several uncomfortable minutes, Sharon finally went, and I was able to turn the mattress over. From this and other such tales, our relationship blossomed. We spent all our time together, little trips, big holidays, theatres, meals, weekends away, seeing relatives, but we didn't really have a holiday. We decided to take up sign language, which was run by a 45-year-old man. Now, he'd been deaf since the age of 2. Now, the room was shaped in a U shape when we sat at the front of the U, right at the top. It was a mixed ability class, so it went from me, genius, to the bottom of the U, pretty thick, and then back up to the other right-hand side, a moderate ability. Now, I really enjoyed the class, and I was somewhat of a swot. I used to borrow all the books and all the DVDs, and I gradually got really into it. And I tried to replicate all the hand actions and finger gestures as best as I could. Unfortunately, I went a little bit too far, and I managed to perfect the voice. Now, there is an element of mouthing in sign language, but you shouldn't really vocalise it. But I'll give you an example. And I would do that, and then Sharon would go, "You're doing the voice." And I would say, "He can't hear, but they can." She's like, "Oh yeah." Unfortunately, it got a little bit worse. Let's remember, he was a 45-year-old man. He was deaf since the age of 2. And all his friends were physically disabled, mentally disabled, physically and mentally disabled, and had some terrible accident. Now I was the class SWAT, so he'd always look to me to say, "Does the rest of the class get it?" And I'd give him the sort of thumb, "Yeah, I reckon they probably get it." And he said, "Where did you go last week?" And I said, "I went to Nottingham," which is basically 2 taps or a tap and a bow and arrow from someone outside, maybe London. Nottingham, Robin Hood, Nottingham, it's obvious. Unfortunately, I didn't do that. I went Nottingham. Doesn't mean a great deal to you, but to me, I was very annoyed and also embarrassed in my own stupidity. But the only way in that split second, as the whole group looked at me, and most of these people couldn't do anything, the only way that I could express my own stupidity was to do this. And I wouldn't recommend you did it, but you might do. But I went, Sharon elbowed me again, harder than she had on the previous occasion, and said, "Stop doing it!" I realised what I'd done at the time, and looked to Sharon and said, "Have you noticed?" And she said, "Just keep looking at me." But Sharon always looked out for me, and always went out to, and always goes out of her way to help me, miles and miles out of her way. So this is the last little story I've got, but this just shows you the extent that Sharon goes out of her way to help me out. And I've not met anyone to this day that said, "Yeah, that's a dog."
Come on, it's tiny.
It was a Chinese meal in Manchester, Christmas 2010. I decided to go out in a t-shirt in about 2-degree heat. I'm not a man that typically wears a jacket and everything. I'm suitably ill-dressed.
Fix that.
We sat at a table, a circular table, and we had our own personal chef
I'm doing it.
frying flat chips.